Hey, you. How's it going, fellow city builder? Welcome to another video about early to mid-game items that you want to get your hands on as soon as possible. These are some of the items I begin to look for as soon as I have the spare money to do so. If you're enjoying this little mini-series I've been working on, please give it a like and a subscribe. You have no idea how much it helps fight off the evil YouTube algorithm along with your other favorite creators. But without further ado, today, our first item we're going to talk about is going to be Taxman Tim. So Taxman Tim helps you kind of indirectly. So he increases your harbor activity by 25%, meaning when other AI come to buy from your dock, it's going to increase the frequency of that by 25%. But he also has a chance to give you 5 tons of weapons or advanced weapons. So it gives you a little bit of items that you can trade off. It's not an item I would say I necessarily go out of my way for right away, but it's one I get pretty earlier, especially because I'm not the biggest fan of the war setup in Anno 1800. But he does give you the ability to not have your dock taken over once the shares are bought. But let's be fair, if you've already lost most of your shares, chances are you were already in trouble anyways. The second item we're going to be talking about today is going to be Perfumer Prunella. So she doesn't necessarily bring you any production increases or extra items, but what she does do is reduce the need for tallow. So what it does is it allows the wood to be replaced for tallow. So it reduces the cost to produce, and in turn you can trade off the excess or whatever you so choose. So from a workforce point of view, you'll now be able to spend less workers to create tallow. In a normal setup without specialists, you'll need 2 tallow buildings with 2 pig farms for 1 soap building. This is going to eliminate like 4 buildings, totaling 60 farmers and 80 workers, and on a smaller end, $160. But that worker decrease, especially early in the game, is just so beneficial. Number 3, Grigor the Geologist. In our last Anno video, we talked about Grigor and how he's one of the specialists and supply chains that I build as quick as possible in early game. He brings that like electricity to the table, doubling your output of any one of the buildings that he does cover, without having to waste that oil, because you might not have oil that early. You may or may not. I usually try to only set up oil when I absolutely have to, which is probably why my my cities tend to struggle pretty early. But he does cover the speed of clay pits, limestone quarry, saltpeter, and sand mines. I would say late game it's worth using on clay pits also, once you can actually move them around. But I mean, I haven't run into too many seeds where clay pits are really close to each other like that. I almost exclusively use it for sand mines. Unless you need a lot from for glass, you'll need quite a few for spectacles and champagne later on. But I do trade off most of the sand and pearls on my dock lands wharf to get the items I need or don't want to set up chains for in other instances, whether it's, bringing in rum from the New World and whatnot. But the next item we're going to be talking about is going to be Chef Michel. So Chef Michel allows you to use pigs instead of goulash in your cannery recipes. You also do get 1 sausage for every 2 processes. So you get like 1 every 3 minutes or so without electricity. But there's no real way to leverage that to make it worth it earlier game. There are some legendary items that can really make this powerful, but just not in early to mid game. His power to me comes at the savings of workforce and setting up chains. Being able to allow those pigs in the place of goulash. Goulash needs red pepper and beef. In the beginning, I almost feel like I have to have 2 of each to really get the amount I need from my initial artisans to be taken care of. I also kind of have terrible luck and almost have always had the peppers on another island. So I always end up having to set up a second island without a commuter pier. So I end up having to set up a whole nother group of neighborhoods to take care of that. For me, this eliminates a ton of extra buildings for the cost of some farmers for the pig farms with a more manageable ratio, I find. On to the next item. The next item we're going to talk about is actually going to be a town square item. I know I tend to try to keep it to trade union items, but for me, this item is so helpful early game. Not so much at the point that I'm in this particular video you're watching in the background, but it really does do some things some early game, especially in the artisan window. Well, really only in the artisan window for me. So it's going to be the actor. The actor gives you the ability to have an increased happiness, but its real power is going to be the rum and canned food is provided with the variety theater. So if the house is built within the radius of that town square and has a variety theater, you're not going to have to do any rum or canned food. So early game, you're going to get that canned food. I know we just talked about an item just before this in Chef Michel, but if you can even reduce further the amount of rum that needs to be brought in from the New World and the canned food you're having to produce, because it is kind of a weird ratio, it really kind of does help. It's really early game, especially for rum. I wasn't needing to make rum in this particular playthrough. Oh, really well into investors. I had quite a few investors, and then I finally needed to start because I just wasn't creating enough. But it's I usually buy a few of these and I try to keep them in each one of my little groups, which will play right into the next item we're going to talk about. It's going to be Sir Lewis Brindley the Chemist. This is a neat little item that does a couple important things in a playthrough. First, he doubles the production output from the schnapps distillery, working like it already has electricity. Now, little cheeky ways, you can throw some extra electricity on there, and it'll be able to produce at about 300%. But to do that, you're going to need to produce and or trade for a lot of potatoes. Schnapps isn't that hard to produce, but his extra item is where that juiciness lies for me. For every 3 cycles, which is about 45 seconds total, without electricity, you'll get 1 rum. So it doesn't seem like it's that much, 1 rum for every 45 seconds, but when you have a normal setup, like I do about 8 to 10 schnapps distilleries, I can support a bit more and get more aggressive and throw in like, Ferrous Al Sarabi for another extra 50% and Forkton 8 item from Nate for another 25%, or hell, even Brewmaster Bill for electricity. And you can just produce a ton of schnapps and then get a ton of rum. You do need to be able to find a way to use up or trade off that schnapps, though, or you will cap out. And unfortunately, if the schnapps distillery is not running, you're not getting any extra rum out of it. The last item we're going to talk about is probably going to be my favorite one on the list just because of the amount of free items, but it's going to be Dario the Mechanical Engineer. So his main, feature, I guess, is that iron ore will replace steel. Dario also brings some high-end items to the table for free while reducing the cost of producing those items that he affects. Let's talk about his replacement portion of his effects, though. His effects are applied to bicycles and sewing machines and allows them to use iron ore instead of steel. Makes it a little bit easier because you're not having to have 2 more chains. So this reduces the overall needs from those chains, which saves them about 2 coal per minute, and eliminating the 100 workers needed to run that furnace on top of that. Where he really gets you some really high tier free items is that occasionally he's going to give you 1 pocket watch, a 1 gramophone every 8th cycle. So 8 cycles does take quite a bit. So I mean, you're not going to be producing these on a high level, but if you get them early enough, by the time you need the gramophones and the pocket watches, you'll already have quite a few banked away. So I will say it is a little more beneficial to have it on your bicycle chain, though, as you produce 1 bicycle every 15 seconds without electricity, making it so that you get 1 every 2 minutes. Whereas if you use the sewing machine, it's 30 seconds, so you'd only get 1 every 4 minutes. You can fit a number of both in the area. So, I mean, it's not that big of a deal. The sewing machine building is pretty big, not going to lie. But you can fit quite a few in that particular area. With electricity, you could almost produce enough watches and gramophones to support a good number of engineers and investors. So that makes it kind of worth it. So that's my list. We'll call it a top 7. Top 7? Good 7? We'll figure out what we're going to name it. You'll see it when you see the title. Thanks for checking out this particular top whatever from Sarge. Let me know how you liked it or anything that you think might be different. Put it down in the comment section. Tell me what you go after really early in your playthroughs. Again, feel free to like and subscribe and check out the next Anno series. Season 3 is going to be making its way here pretty soon. But until then, I have a few more of these that I'm looking to share with everybody. But until next time, take care of yourselves. Be good. Towel out.